Welcome to the Threat Insight Risk Overview for telecommunication operations in Mozambique. Mozambique's operating environment is defined by three converging pressures, which include political volatility following the contested 2024 elections and continuing unrest. Secondly, macroeconomic fragility, including slow growth, high public debt, and foreign exchange shortages. And thirdly, persistent jihadist insurgency in the northern provinces, creating large-scale displacement and directly impacting infrastructure operations and investment. For telecom operators, this combination drives both systemic risk and operational complexity across the entire value chain. Besides these three converging pressures, there are four key risks faced by telecom operators in the country. Firstly, let's consider the regulatory risk. Regulation in the industry has become an increasingly important determinant of operational continuity. Under Decree 48/2025, the national regulator has been granted explicit authority to impose partial or total network shutdowns, including blocking social media platforms. This means operators must be prepared for rapid compliance actions, potential reputational exposure, and a heightened monitoring and reporting obligation. In short, compliance must now be engineered into network policy and automation, and not treated as a periodic governance requirement. Secondly, the economic environment in Mozambique is under pressure, with GDP growth having slowed significantly during 2024. At the same time, public debt is rising, and foreign exchange reserve constraints make it difficult to import essential network equipment. For operators, this results in extended capex cycles, increased equipment costs, delays in upgrading infrastructure, all of which is further constrained by reduced consumer affordability. However, despite these challenges, there is an upside in terms of a rural broadband need, the digital inclusion drive, and mobile financial services. Security risks are the third key risk and are, without question, one of the dominant factors shaping network operations. The insurgency in Cabo Delgado continues to disrupt access routes, damage tower sites, and constrain maintenance activities. With attacks now spilling over into Nampula and Niassa, the risk geography is now expanding. The result of this expansion is that more than 900,000 people have been displaced. Telecom operators are spending more on hardening higher-risk sites. The mean time to repair is longer due to movement restrictions, while the reliance on security escorts and community networks is increasing operating costs. This is further compounded by an increased dependence on costly low-Earth orbit satellite backhaul for resilient connectivity. Security cannot be a secondary consideration in Mozambique, but must therefore be deeply embedded in rollout planning and operational governance. Finally, value chain risk impacts operations directly with spectrum licensing, which carries political and regulatory exposure. Network builds face logistics delays, power instability, and conflict zone access challenges, while operations and maintenance are affected by vandalism, unrest-related access restrictions, and foreign exchange-based import delays. Cyber and mobile money ecosystems face rising fraud risk as digital adoption accelerates. And finally, consumer pricing is constrained by low literacy, widespread poverty, and multi-SIM behavior. This end-to-end risk profile requires operators to adopt a security first, compliance first, resilience first mindset. From a competitor risk landscape, Mozambique's telecom sector is shaped by three dominant operators. The first is Vodacom, the urban market leader with strong mobile money penetration but exposed to higher northern operating costs and potential political shutdowns. Secondly is Movitel, the rural coverage specialist, with deep reach in underserved areas but heavily affected by insurgency-related risks. And lastly, Telecom, the state-owned operator whose competitiveness continues to decline due to prolonged financial distress despite having a strong national backbone. Rising competitive pressure also comes from low Earth orbit satellite providers such as Starlink and OneWeb, particularly in enterprise and backhaul services. Strategically, operators must focus on strengthening resilience and regulatory compliance, securing operational rollouts through hardened sites and protected logistics, improving financial discipline by hedging FX exposure and leveraging donor programs, and driving growth and inclusion through low-cost devices, micro bundles, and enhanced fraud analytics for mobile money. To stay ahead of emerging threats, operators should closely monitor early warning indicators such as protest escalation, government shutdown directives, insurgent activity near critical sites, foreign exchange-driven import delays, and sustained electricity rationing, all of which require predefined thresholds and rapid response mechanisms to safeguard operational continuity, sustained growth, and competitiveness. From a security perspective, the following 9 threats must be monitored and addressed. Firstly, insurgent activity, which threatening network sites and field teams. Northern Mozambique, particularly Cabo Delgado and increasingly Nampula and Niassa, continues to present the highest physical security risk for telecom operations due to persistent insurgent activity. Critical roads, such as the N380, face frequent ambushes that restrict technician mobility and disrupt the movement of fuel and equipment. Raids on villages and semi-urban communities result in damage or destruction of tower infrastructure, while widespread attacks across multiple districts force civilian displacement and destabilize the areas surrounding telecom sites. Operational impacts include longer repair times due to access restrictions and the need for armed escorts, heightened risks to field personnel requiring movement limitations during dawn and dusk, and an increased likelihood of tower vandalism, theft, or intentional sabotage. Secondly, there is an expansion of violence into new provinces. Violence has expanded beyond Cabo Delgado into previously stable provinces, particularly Nampula and Niassa, where insurgents have begun targeting villages, infrastructure, and key transport routes. These attacks have driven more than 100,000 new displacements within a single month, creating volatile conditions and placing additional pressure on communities located near telecom infrastructure. In this context, operators must reassess the risk tiers of all sites in these regions, revise access protocols, and adjust logistics routes to ensure staff safety and operational continuity. Thirdly, we see widespread vandalism, looting and access denial during civil unrest episodes. Political unrest following the 2024 elections has triggered widespread instability in major urban centers such as Maputo, Beira, Nampula, and Zambezia, where protests have led to vandalism, looting, violent clashes, and the blockage of roads critical for operational logistics. Electricity rationing in the southern regions has increased dependency on generators, while border and port shutdowns have disrupted the importation of essential spare parts. Telecom assets face the risk of vandalism, opportunistic theft, delays in fuel distribution leading to generator outages, and damage to retail locations, switching centers, and customer-facing infrastructure. The fourth threat relates to the logistics corridor insecurity. Access to remote or northern sites remains compromised due to ambushes on commercial and humanitarian convoys, theft or seizure of equipment and fuel, and temporary road closures caused by insurgent attacks or civil unrest. These disruptions threaten service continuity and increase supply chain uncertainty. Over the next 3 months, security managers must maintain and frequently update alternative routing plans, secure dual supplier fuel arrangements, and pre-position spare parts in protected depots to mitigate the impact of corridor disruptions. The fifth risk speaks back to the cost of physical security requirements at rural sites, especially rural telecom sites, particularly those following a Movatel-style footprint, face some of the most severe security pressures, with towers in northern and deep rural regions exposed to sabotage, theft, and intrusive attempts by hostile groups. Even outside conflict zones, isolated routes present risks of banditry, theft, and community tensions. To reduce exposure, operators must continue strengthening site hardening measures, including enhanced fencing, concealed cabling, tamper detection technology, and remote restart capabilities. Displacement represents the sixth threat, with nearly 1 million internally displaced persons concentrated across the northern regions. Temporary settlements have formed near multiple infrastructure sites, creating conditions for opportunistic theft of fuel, batteries, and solar components. The pressure placed on local security agencies increases the likelihood of conflict between displaced populations and host communities, further destabilizing operating environments. Short-term mitigation requires enhanced perimeter surveillance, increased site monitoring, and active community liaison programs to maintain stability and reduce tensions around critical assets. Climate-driven instability is our seventh threat. Mozambique has recurring cyclones, flooding, and extreme weather events which continue to threaten fiber routes, poles, power lines, and tower foundations. For security managers, priority actions include inspecting towers in flood-prone zones to detect structural vulnerabilities early, ensuring adequate multi-day fuel reserves at high-impact and high-risk sites, and protecting exposed power systems, such as outdoor batteries and hybrid units, from water damage. Electrical supply instability is the second last threat. Ongoing power rationing and grid unreliability have increased operational dependence on generators, which in turn elevates the risk of fuel theft and accelerates wear on generator engines and automatic transfer systems. Challenging security conditions and roadblocks often make fuel deliveries unsafe or unpredictable. To manage these risks, operators should deploy lockable fuel enclosures, use GPS-tracked fuel deliveries, and implement remote telemetry systems to monitor fuel levels and detect anomalies in real time. And finally, regulator-mandated shutdowns, while not physical attacks, can trigger localized hostility as communities attribute service outages to operators rather than state directives. This can expose retail sites and mobile money agents to aggression and place field technicians at risk during verification or maintenance visits. To mitigate these risks, operators must embed shutdown response protocols that minimize the need for physical site intervention during blackout periods and ensure staff safety while maintaining regulatory compliance. In closing, we will look at where your physical security focus should be for the next 3 months. The current physical security environment for telecom operations in Mozambique is defined by persistent insurgent attacks on towers, personnel, and key corridors such as the N380, alongside the continued spread of violence into Nampula and Niassa. Operators are also facing widespread vandalism, looting, and road closures linked to political unrest, while supply chain insecurity driven by fuel shortages, spare part delays, and port disruptions further complicates operations. Rural sites remain high risk, often requiring escorts and hardened infrastructure, and growing IDP pressures near network assets increase the likelihood of theft and community-driven interference. Additionally, climate-related events continue to damage power and network infrastructure. Extended grid instability elevates generator and fuel theft risks. Regulator-mandated shutdowns heighten threats to field staff. And targeted tower destruction in insurgent hotspots remains an escalating concern. We trust you found this risk overview insightful. You are welcome to reach out to our operations team if you need additional information or assistance. In the meantime, subscribe to our channel, click the like button if you found this helpful, and the bell icon to ensure that you receive updates when we publish either a follow-up risk overview or a situational report.